Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode, I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. The everyman, the blue-collar worker, Joe Schmo, the working-class hero. Any of this sound familiar to you? It should, for a litany of different reasons, not because one of them is a great John Lennon tune. The point of this is, if you're a pro wrestling fan, all this makes sense because the idea of the blue-collar hero has been around for a long time. It dates back years and years and years now. And it's this idea of, okay, here's your prototypical pro wrestler. He's probably chiseled. He's probably a good-looking dude. He probably dresses nice, XYZ, blah, blah, blah. And he may be wearing some gold. I'm thinking Ric Flair. He may be wearing some shoes that cost more than your house. Again, I'm thinking Ric Flair. He may spend more money on spilt liquor than you'll ever make this in a lifetime. Again, I'm thinking Ric Flair. Ric's great, one of the best of all time. Hard to relate to a guy like that. Hard to relate to Hulk Hogan, let's be honest. He may have done the say your prayers, vitamins, and all that hoo-ha. But dude, built like a tank, arms that were bigger than your head, good looks, movie star quality about him, even though he was far from a movie star, let me tell you. But he had the whole thing, right? He had everything. But how do I relate to that? What's in it for me? Instead of him telling me how to live, okay, but what's it? Does it make sense, kids? This is what I'm talking about. Hard to relate to someone like that. But somebody that was easy to relate to, and this goes back years and years and years, is the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. Obviously, you think blue collar, you think working class hero, you think man of the people, you think the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. This podcast is not about Dusty Rhodes. That'll happen at another time. This podcast episode is about his son. Not that son, the other one. The guy that's on his way to WrestleMania in 2023. He's vying for the world championship. Wrap your head around that, kids, for a second. In 2023, Cody Rhodes is vying for the world championship against arguably the guy that, I don't know where people how they compare Roman to Cena. I have no idea. That's maybe, we'll get into that here, see what we think, see what you guys think as well. But having said all that, yes, this is probably Cody Rhodes' year. Cody Rhodes, born June 30th, 1985, as we all know, is an American professional wrestler and, yes, actor. He is currently signed to World Wrestling Entertainment, of course, performing on the Raw brand. But a lot of people know him from a couple of other things, Bullet Club, namely, in New Japan Pro Wrestling, and of course, as a founder and executive vice president of All Elite Wrestling, where he was a three-time AEW TNT champion. He's only 37. It may sound old in pro wrestling years, but not these days. These guys go to their early 60s at this point. Some of them beyond that, for crying out loud. Cody Rhodes, considered to be perhaps one of the best pro wrestlers walking around today. A lot to get into here, but that is essentially your lowdown on the man known as Cody Rhodes. Phil, we've talked a lot about Cody on wrestling podcasts over the past couple of years, and you've written quite a bit about him, I know, and I've written a lot about his family and whatnot over the years. So where do we stand right now on Cody? If you had to get nailed down on your absolute opinion on this guy, through and through as an all-around performer, what do you think of Cody Rhodes in 2023?
Well, first of all, I think it's hilarious when you were giving that lowdown on Cody Rhodes. I still think it's funny that we have the exact same birthday, like month, date, and year, the exact same birthday.
Nice.
It's very funny to me every time I think about it. But I think Cody is one of the most fascinating guys in wrestling. Not just because he's good in ring, not just because of the character work we've seen him do, but you could just tell that he has just such a great mind for wrestling. You could tell how much he loves wrestling. Um, but there's just so many things about him that are just fascinating. In some ways, he is kind of a walking contradiction. Um, it's so funny to me. Um, he is this guy who came from meager beginnings, and his father made his character of, like you said, being the everyman, being the son of a plumber. And Cody, in a lot of ways, is about as audacious and showy as you can get. Like, he shows up in these um, great looking suits every time you see him. He's got about as much pyro as money can buy. Um, he's got the huge entrances. He's got this big, ridiculous neck tattoo. Everything about him is, it just screams extra. Like, it's not what you would think of Dusty at all. But I think that's kind of what makes the American Nightmare such a great name for him, because I do think in a lot of ways he's the polar opposite of what Dusty was. I mean, you can see the glimpses of Dusty in him when he cuts his promos, because he has kind of the same cadence, he has the same passion behind his
Mhm.
promos. But just the direction he took with his career, just some of the things that he does as a character, are just so opposite of what you would think of Dusty. Um, I mean, even his current uh, his current trajectory with WWE is just not what you would think when you think the son of Dusty Rhodes. Like, just him coming and winning the Royal Rumble this year and looking like he's going to be the guy uh, that's going to main event WrestleMania. Like, that's just still surreal to think about. Cody Rhodes, um, thinking about where Cody Rhodes was in 2016, and now thinking about Cody Rhodes 7 years later, main eventing WrestleMania, and probably going to be the guy to beat Roman Reigns. Um, it's wild. It's wild to think about.
Is there a planet on which he does not beat Roman? Because I can't even envision that not happening.
With WWE, because
Yeah.
they are definitely a company that tries to throw a twist in and it doesn't give you the obvious outcome. I can absolutely see him losing. I think it would be a terrible idea if he
Mhm.
does, but I could see it happening for sure, because
I have
they
no
do things
faith.
like that all the time.
Oh, and yeah, yeah, sure. And I have no faith in them whatsoever. But my God, I mean, a blind man at this point could see that it's a terrible idea to
Yeah.
not put Cody over. And we're going to talk a lot about his dad here, obviously, for a lot of different reasons. But one thing that he did inherit, he does look like Dusty, of course.
Mhm.
He does have that swagger when he wants to have it. And also, dude, he's got his head for business, man. Cody's very, very smart. I mean, is that you? Do you think that's his biggest connection to his dad? Is his smarts about this business?
I think his smarts. I think, of course, like certain things, like his passion for wrestling, some of the similarities that you can see um in just their real life, um I don't want to say personas, but just their real personalities. Um yeah, I think you can see some of the similarities in him, but again, I just think the fact that he's just so opposite of Dusty in some ways is what makes him so fascinating to me. Um, like, I don't know, like, I mean, even the fact that he is just like this tall, good-looking guy, athletic and all these other things, and that's not what you think when you think Dusty. You think Dusty's a good worker, he's a good wrestler, but you don't think of Dusty being like this guy that is in great shape.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like, his brother Dustin, obviously Dustin Rhodes, the formerly known as Goldust. But
Yeah, true.
Dustin Rhodes is. I mean, he's battled his weight over the years like his dad did. But it looks like Cody didn't get that gene. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, both of them are, over 6 feet tall. Um, yeah, I mean, when you picture like uh what the son of a wrestler would look like, a guy that looks like they're made to do this. They're built to be in this business. You can look at the Rhodes and go, yeah, these two guys belong in a wrestling ring.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. And, we're going to get there, of course, here talking about this guy. But one of the things he says is a lot of times guys leave WWE or get fired by WWE, but there's always that little bit of buzz right when they get out on the scene. But like all buzz, it fades. But I feel really flattered that for whatever reason, it seems to be trending upwards. And that, of course, was when, Bullet Club was happening and he was starting to become red hot. Because one of the things I would say criticisms, Phil, because I don't know what else to call it. One of the criticism on this guy is that, oh, he just made himself into a star. Like, I mean, how in the world did that become a bad thing? And why is that a bad thing, for goodness sake?
I think even if you don't like the way he handled business on the way out of AEW, or even if you didn't like his last year with AEW, you got to respect his hustle, man. You got to respect that he left that company and was told that this is the way we see you, this is the value we have for you.
Mm.
And he said, that's not enough for me. I'm going to go and show you that I am a star and that you have to see me in this way. And he not only went away and proved himself with other companies, when became a world champion with Ring of Honor, when became a part of the hottest heel faction in the world in New Japan, um, went and became a part of uh, uh, a hot period for indie wrestling that completely changed the industry, and was one of the founders of, I feel like, one of the most legitimate competition WWE has ever had. Uh, you got to give him his credit for all of that stuff, and then managed to come all the way through that and come full circle and come back to the WWE. And they have to look at this guy like, no, this guy's a star. We have to treat him like a star because he's proven it at this point. Every time that anybody has said he can't do something, he's proven them wrong. I mean, AEW would not be a thing if Dave did not bet this guy that an indie show couldn't do the numbers he did, and he proved him wrong. Didn't just prove him wrong; he built an entire company off of the back of that bet.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And like, he didn't get insulted by what Dave said at all. He just took it as a challenge, which that's Dusty. There's a lot of things this guy does that is just reminds me so much of his dad. Like, instead of responding a certain way, he takes it and makes the best of it. Like, that's Dusty Rhodes, man. Like, they put this dude in polka dots. And in my opinion, from my chair, I think Vince did everything in his power to humiliate him as the guy that was leading the charge against him in another company. That's I'll never not believe that. But Dusty's version of it was, I didn't want the pressure of being Booker anymore. I couldn't take it. The stress was too much. I just wanted to have fun. And dude, he made the best of that lame, ridiculous character. And honestly, a lot of WWE fans who grew up watching that's the only Dusty they know, and they love him. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
like he was stupid, he was silly. Dude, they freaking love him. So I think Cody's got a lot of that, man, where like if you put him on blast, he'll respond and man, he will deliver every time. Does it surprise you where Cody came, considering where he was once upon a time in this company?
I think it would have surprised me uh, back in 2016, but I think the more you saw this guy um, elsewhere, and the more you saw what the value he brought elsewhere, you could see it. I wasn't this big Cody Rhodes fan back when he was doing the Stardust stuff, or even when he was doing the Dashing Cody Rhodes stuff. Um, I thought he was good. I thought he was an interesting wrestler, but I wasn't a fan of his like I became until later on in his career. I think I started really getting interested in him during the Ring of Honor stuff. I think the stuff he did as our always champion was great. I think he was a tremendous heel at that point. Like the coming out and having people kiss the ring was great. Uh, one of the things I just will never forget about that time period, and I laugh every time I see the clip of it, is the match with Kota Ibushi at Wrestle Kingdom, and Kota knocks Brandy off of the ring, and Kota's just all apologetic, and then Cody just jumps up and knocks him down, and him and Brandy just laughing his face afterwards, and Cody just looks so confused. It's just so funny every time I see it. But I think that he worked his ass off, man. He worked and worked to show people like, no, I'm not just my dad's son. I'm not just some guy that got a chance with WWE and then got to do this goofy warped bizarro version of Gold Dust. And no, I'm much more than any of those gimmicks. I'm much more than the guy that came out with the face protector on and all this other stuff. I'm versatile. I can be a top guy if given a chance. And I think there are a lot of people for a long time that thought, nah, this guy's just an average wrestler. But no, I think the more and more you saw of him outside of WWE, you could see what made him special. And I don't know, it was just something about being at All In and watching him win the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. And to my opinion, I think that's still the highlight of his career. At least, it probably will be until he wins this match at WrestleMania, if he wins it. But I still think that's one of the greatest things I've ever seen him do. Just the emotion that night and watching him raise that belt and just everything that went into that match. It was amazing. And I think that helped go into his first year or so with AEW, where he had a really, really great babyface run with them. I thought at one point he was the hottest babyface in the company.
100%. Who's the last guy to be NWA World Champion that held the WWE Championship? Like the most recent? Because I'm sitting here thinking, God, I don't know.
They held the WWE Championship after they held the
Yes.
NWA Champion?
Yes.
Oh.
Because it hasn't been the other way around, except, Cody didn't have WWE title either. I mean, I'm going back in my head.
AJ Styles?
That's probably the right answer. Yeah,
that's
probably the right because it's probably the right answer because I'm thinking about you're right when the NWA title was in TNA. Yeah, that's got to be it for sure. Man, that's going back a while too.
Yeah, that was years ago.
Yeah.
But I really grew to appreciate Cody a lot, especially after All In. I think that was just a special night for him, not just because of what it meant to prove Dave wrong in that moment and what it meant for All In to be a success, but just, to win the title that, his dad helped to make famous that night and just everything that went into that match. Really, really great match as well. And I think just his first feud with AEW going into their first pay-per-view is still one of my favorite things he's done as well. Those promos he was cutting on Dustin at the time where he was saying like, I hate the Attitude Era. I hate how overrated it is. And I'm going to kill the image of the Attitude Era. Great, great stuff. That match at Double or Nothing is still amazing. His first year with AEW was just really, really good.
Man, when he and Dustin are on opposite sides of the ring, and after the bell rang, before they touch, and the crowd is chanting Dusty, dude, I had tears in my eyes. I'm such a Dusty Rhodes guy. I can't help. And they were both crying at the same time. I'm like, this is the best thing. You don't even have to work the match. I don't care about the match now. This is the best thing ever. Just that moment in time was amazing.
or his promo at the end of the match when he beat Dustin, and he's saying he wants to wrestle in a tag team match, and he's his older brother.
Yeah, I need to fight with my brother, whatever. Yeah. Well, we know he's took acting lessons, and here's another bit of so and so people like to throw at this guy. His promos. Now, I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound a certain kind of way. A lot of his promos are very paint by numbers, very deliberate, slow. His cadence is very deliberate. But I don't mean any of that as an insult. I don't need this guy to get fired up like his dad did. I don't need him to scream. I don't need him to do anything else. But my comment is that's how he cuts promos. Do you have like an opinion on this? Is it too rehearsed? Like I think Roman called him rehearsed on Monday. Is he too rehearsed, you think sometimes?
I think that he's a great talker when he's motivated. I do think that you can tell he rehearses his promos, but I do think that he manages to get passion into his promos that's unmatched. Like, um, when I think about some of the promos he cut, especially in that first year when he talked about wanting to be AEW World Champion in that feud with Jericho, and the later stuff with MJF he did. And again, those promos he was cutting on Dustin and the lead in the Double or Nothing were really good. Uh, I think one of the best things I've ever seen him do, and again, you could tell it's one of those prepared things. But do you remember when he cut that promo in the middle of the ring with just the spotlight on him in the empty arena at the first match during the first AEW show during the pandemic? That was empty arena.
So good. I loved it,
Amazing.
actually. Yeah.
Amazing. But those are the things that, I think that Cody is going to be known for when all is said and done. I mean, even when you look back on the WWE stuff so far, I think that he's been on a stretch of tremendous segments. The segment he had with Sammy, where he was trying to fire him up and get him to believe in himself, really, really good. And in the end of it, he's going, you go finish your story, and I'm going to go finish my story at WrestleMania. I don't want to see you on Raw again. I want to see you at WrestleMania. So, so good.
So great. Yeah. He, and let's be honest, some guys are going to have haters to spite because a lot of people are trash bags. Let's be honest. That's what they are. And I got that from a wrestler, by the way, but they just are. They just want to hate for the sake of hating because it's much more fun for them to be unhappy than it is happy. I don't have any idea, but you hear these criticisms about the guy, the neck tat, like at the height of AEW, he goes and gets this neck tat at the time when they're talking about, he's getting into acting and he wants to make, let's be honest, Phil, as much as these guys love the business, they want to be able to walk without pain one day. So that means maybe you don't wrestle for 35, 40 years. So he's got a future, man. He's a good looking guy. He's still young, but then he goes and gets this massive neck tattoo. I mean, of course, Phil, if they can digitize out Batista and Rock's tats, I guess it's not a big deal, but I don't know. What's your take on that?
Cody Rhodes is one of the most unintentionally funny guys in this business, man. He just does so many things. That's why I keep saying he's so fascinating, for a lack of better words, because he just does and says many things. I'm just like, this guy, man. I don't know if you remember, during that time period, he did an episode of Unrestricted. It's still out there. You can find a clip of it. Well, the whole episode's out there. And he's sitting there talking to Aubrey and Tony Schiavone, and he's got this scarf around his neck, covering up the tattoo, because this is before anybody had seen it on TV. It's so great. Looking at it now, knowing he has this tattoo, and he's got like this scarf on under his warm up jacket. It's just so funny, man.
Jeez.
He just does so many things that I have to imagine on some levels that he likes messing with people. And he can be very, very funny. I think for a minute he was one of the funnier guys on BTE. Like those weeks where they were leading up to the Kenny Omega feud, and he was just like, no, everything's fine. Bullet Club's fine. And he came in with the new shirt, and it was Bullet Club is fine with that big smile on his face. It's great. I love him. The stuff that he was doing with Flip at one point, really, really funny, man.
I miss some of that, being the elite stuff with him specifically and Flip. Those were fun times, man.
Yeah, no, I think that he just gets it, man. I don't think he takes himself too seriously. And I think that's why the tattoo doesn't. After a while, you're just like, it's just Cody. Of course, he's got this ridiculous neck tattoo, but it just shows he doesn't take himself that seriously, man. Remember when he was doing the Master P bit at shows and doing the make him say,
Oh God,
so funny. He had that ridiculous shirt on PW Pro Wrestling Tees with him on the front with the fur jacket.
So okay. So that brings me to this: better heel or face? If we're talking comical fun heel in a fur coat, like his dad would wear, maybe we say heel. But what do you think he's better at?
Oh man, it's so hard to say because I think that he was a great heel with ROH, and I think some of the heel stuff he did with New Japan, like when he eventually turns on Omega, and he gives him that crossroad, and then he's like standing over him with that creepy smile on his face and laughing. No, he's just like he's like a ridiculous, um, over the top action movie villain. I love it, but at the same time, when I think of how well he connected as a babyface, not just during All In when he won the NWA title, but just his run in that first year where he was getting the lashes from MJF, that crazy moonsault he did off the top of the cage. Just I mean, all the stuff he did with the TNT title initially. He's a really fun babyface, and I'm really enjoying him as a babyface with WWE right now. Um, I'm I'm gonna say babyface. I don't know. There's something so that comes off so genuine about him. I feel like even if you could tell, some of this is contrived and, you know, like you said about his promos, you could tell this is rehearsed. I don't know. It's just something about him. You just want to like him. I can't describe it. Like when you see him come out, and he's taking the weight belt off, and you see how excited kids are to see him, and they're so excited when he gives them the belt. You just want to like this guy. I don't know what it is.
He's very likable, 100%. And like, I'm not going to speak for the guy, but it kind of feels like, when you grow up and one of your parents is famous or whatever, that you don't see them the way other people do. Dude, it kind of feels like Dustin and Cody both saw their dad as the world saw them. It kind of like he's still dad, but they were able to maybe distance themselves from that and say, okay, I see why people go nuts for this guy. Because I mean, not just that they love him, but they can see the appeal of the character. So like,
Yeah.
I respect what he brings to the game, dude. And I think you're right. I think he's a much better babyface than he is a heel. It's
Yeah,
close though, isn't it?
it is close. Because there are things I very much enjoy with him healing it up, but I do enjoy him as a babyface. And I think that he just adds something different to WWE. I think the reason that he works so well there is that um, everybody else there is doing the company stuff. You can tell they all talk the same. They all cut very similar promos, other than a handful of people. And I think what makes him so refreshing is that no, this isn't him trying to be a WWE wrestler. This is him doing what he's been doing for the past 3 or 4 years, but just doing it there. He took what worked somewhere else and was like, I don't have to change that to fit in this peg here at WWE. I know that people liked this before, so I'm gonna do it here. Like everything about his presentation at WWE is just who he was in AEW. I
Yeah,
mean,
nothing changed. Nothing.
all of it is exactly the same. His entrance, he just doesn't have the elevator anymore. But I mean, his entrance, his logo, his catchphrases, they're all the same. Um, and again, it's just something about him. Like when you see everybody else that's trying to fit in and trying to do what they think the company wants him to do, he just walks in and he's just being himself. With if you watch him do that press scrum after Royal Rumble, I get it. You can see why this guy can be the face of a company, man. He's so polished in interviews. He it doesn't sound like, he's giving you a fake answer. Again, I'm pretty sure that, he's not always telling the truth. He's not always giving you 100%, but he's just good at making it seem like he is. He's good at making it look like he's being genuine. He's really good at it.
You can
Go ahead.
put him on the late night talk shows and he's going to come off like a charm, dude.
He is. I mean, listen, him coming in there and they had all the pitch black up there to promote the pitch black match. And he sits down and he's getting ready to answer some questions. And he's like, hey, somebody's got to drink this pop, huh? And he opens it up and takes a sip. Only Cody would think to do that.
Yeah, he's got a way about him. He's got something. And whether it's been whether it's deliberate, because I suspect some of it is,
Yeah.
but I don't know that it matters because it just feels like him. He's very good at, and I guess what I'm saying is if this is all an act, he's very good at it because it doesn't
He's
feel like an act to me.
absolutely. If this guy is a politician or like a very good used car salesman, bro, he's got me fooled, man. Cause and don't get me wrong, I don't agree with everything he does or says, and I'm pretty sure that he's got some political views that I don't want to know about. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but man, when you see this guy, you just want to like him, man. And I just uh, that that uh that press scrum after Royal Rumble was the most recent incident where I was just sitting watching this, like, yeah, I just know this isn't real. I just know that he's probably putting on for people, but I don't know, man. Something about him, man. You just want to root for this guy. But
Mm-hmm.
I've seen him do some really cool things for people, man. I've seen him do really nice things for people that he didn't have to do. And I don't know how much of that is, you want to be seen being nice to people, but at face value, he seems like a good guy.
He does. I agree with you on the political views. I don't think I want to know either because I think we're both pretty sure what the answer is. But yeah,
Yeah.
he seems like the real deal, man. I can't argue that. I mean, I think a lot of that goes back to his dad was the American dream, so he's the American nightmare. Anybody that's got a problem with that, just forget you, man, because like it's his dad's gimmick. If anybody has the right to do this, it's him. But that means he wears the flags everywhere,
Hmm.
his tights, and sometimes that's not the best look in this day and age, right? But like he'll come out during turbulent times and he's still wearing it. And I'm like, oh, Cody, come on, man. Read the room, dude. So like, yeah, there's
Yeah.
moments when I feel like I want to say tone deaf, but do you think that's what it is?
I do think he's had moments that were tone deaf, like that whole super patriotic feud he tried to have with Anthony Ogogo. That was just a complete miss. That promo that he did about, you know, having, a mixed daughter and all of that was definitely a choice.
Hmm.
So I don't like everything he does, but more often than not, I enjoy him. I mean, even towards the end of his AEW run, when he was trying to do that "I'm not turning" thing, but I'm essentially being a heel anyway thing, guy is really smart, man. Because what I kept telling people at the time is, if your crowd is telling you, we want to boo you, we want you to turn heel, and your response to that is, I'm never going to turn. That's a turn
Hmm.
because you're not giving the audience what they want. That's not a babyface move.
I
Now,
mean, it's hard to argue with that.
that gets a little bit meta for people, and I kept saying that to people, and they're like, "Yeah, but look," I'm like, "Yeah, but look at how much he enjoys playing into the way the crowd would boo him." I was there that night, and at the Thanksgiving Eve show. I don't know if you know the one where he had the 6-man match with I can't remember who was on his team, but he was up against Andrade, Malachi Black. Who else was on that team? Is it Penta? I don't remember, but
It
that was
sounds
the
familiar. Yeah.
that was the night where he threw his weight belt into the crowd and the crowd threw it back.
Mm-hmm.
Just great stuff. I mean, all this stuff I think about that him going through that flaming table, the ridiculous the ridiculous third TNT title win where he acted like he you would have thought this guy was Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania. He dropped to his knees and he's like he's like over celebrating. It was so funny, man.
Man. We're skipping around, right? But he has the feud with Darby. The first match on a TNT Dynamite ever for this company, or
Yeah.
excuse me, on AEW was him and Sammy Guevara.
Yeah. And I mean, really, him and Sammy had some great matches together. That last match he had with him was one of the best ladder matches I've ever seen. And I don't think
It
I'm
was really
exaggerating.
good. It was
Uh,
good. Yeah.
one of the best ladder matches I've ever seen. Uh, I mean, the TNT title would not be what it is without him. I feel like the legacy of the TNT title exists because of Cody Rhodes. Um, and just think of everything we got out of that initial TNT title run. We got Eddie Kingston. We got Ricky Stark. Um, he eventually, like you said, put Darby over, and
Brody
Darby
Lee.
ended up. Yeah, he eventually got a really good run as TNT champion himself.
Hmm.
But that doesn't happen if he doesn't build that storyline with Cody Rhodes.
Yeah, and I think that he means as like you said, he means as much of that title. I don't know if we're talking Arn Anderson World Television title kind of influence, but I'm sure that's what he wanted,
Yeah,
especially considering who Arn is to him. So I mean, geez.
yeah, I think that he had a very admirable approach with that belt of not wanting it to feel like a secondary title or making it. He didn't want it to be a mid card title. He just wanted it to be. He wanted it to be a present title on television, and I think he did a great job with that belt of making it feel important.
Yeah, and it very much did. And speaking of the World Television Championship, we'll remind everybody here that the leather on that belt was red until they retired that title for Brody. So uh, I
Oh
don't think
man.
that's any accident either.
Oh
So,
man, and we're completely skipped over just how great that Brody squash was, just what that did
oh
for Brody.
my God, so good. I mean, that was Brock Lesnar, John Cena type of big, wasn't it? Where you just didn't expect it to happen.
Yeah, I thought that was great. I think that was the closest we're gonna get to Brody getting a big world title win.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, no, yeah, yeah, no doubt. So we don't have to go into massive detail here about his first go around with that company, but we'll hit the highlights. He comes in after working in OVW, teams with Hardcore Holly right off the bat. There's worse guys to get paired with, I'm sure. Holly knows his stuff. He's outspoken in his own right, but I'm sure learning at his side was good for Cody. He goes from that to the legacy, of course, with Ted DiBiase Jr. and Randy Orton. We all know how that ended. Cody goes on his own, becomes dashing Cody Rhodes, which there's a whole other thing there. And then, he has this injury, right? And like he starts wearing this plastic mask with a hood on his head, very Doctor Doom. And that's not an accident, Phil, because he's a comic book guy. So
Yeah, big
another
comic
reason to
guy,
respect him.
big Star Wars guy.
Very true. I forgot. Yeah, dude, he started his own podcast that's nothing about wrestling. He
Hmm.
doesn't talk about wrestling. I don't know if he's still doing it, but the first couple episodes were pretty good. So he goes from all that to Intercontinental Championship. Then we go to Team Rhodes Scholars with himself and Damian Sandow. And then we go to the Brotherhood, which I had a lot of fun with the Brotherhood. I thought it was really good. But then we go to Stardust. And that's how everything ends in that company for him. All told, he begins in OVW in around 2006, 2007, debuts on WWE Raw July 2nd, 2007. And by the time we get to 2016, which is, I mean, dude, Phil, it's 9 years.
Yeah.
But, there's nothing to sneeze at. But at that point, he's gone. What stands out for you in his run? And you don't have to lead off with Stardust stuff, man, but like, what stands out for you? What were there moments for you? I know you said you weren't a huge fan of his stuff, but were there moments where you're like, this guy might have something?
Well, I mean, the reason that I wasn't that big into it is because I was watching wrestling probably the least during that period, especially WWE stuff. Like, I wasn't a big ruthless aggression era guy. Um, but I do appreciate some of the stuff Cody was doing then. Like, I do think he was instrumental in revitalizing the Intercontinental title, um, bringing back the white strap and what he did with that belt. I think it's instrumental in what that belt became years after that. Like, I think Miz and other guys that had runs with the belt afterwards. That was due to uh, Cody coming in and helping to make that title feel like a fixture on TV again. That definitely stands out. Uh, of course, the Stardust stuff stands out for good and bad reasons because I do think that
Mm-hmm.
he did good things at Stardust. I think him doing the Mr. Sinister gear was cool because, as we said, he's a
Yeah,
comic fan.
yeah,
Um, and I think he enjoyed doing that stuff. I think he enjoyed paying homage to his brother. Um, but it just lasted too long. And I think he even feels the same way that it wasn't necessarily that he hated the Stardust stuff. It was just that once he wanted to stop doing it, they wouldn't let him. They just were like, nope, this thing sells action figures and all this other stuff. You got to keep doing it. he didn't want to. And I think once he was done and he saw that that's all they saw him in, yeah, I could see how that would be frustrating.
I mean, it was a gimmick that his dad ran at once upon a time in the AWA. So it's not like, and if you were a Dusty Rhodes guy, you knew the word Stardust. Dusty had used it in promos and whatnot. So you kind of knew where he got it from. It's a play on words. Dust, of course. Dustin was Gold Dust. So like you said, it's a tribute. When he first put on that paint and that suit, two things. My first reaction was, my God in heaven, what am I looking at? Right. But number two was, I think I kind of love this because I want to see what he does. I want to see if he has, because dude, at the time, I would suspect that people thought Cody's one dimensional. He's flat. I don't know if he can do. And dude, he inhabited this bizarre, oddball, weird, goofy character to the point where you kind of forgot Cody was doing it, right? And I don't want to say like Danhausen or anything, but man, he kind of became somebody else here, didn't he?
He did. And I think that he understands all the aspects of wrestling. I think that he understands that wrestling can be uh taken more serious, and it can be, you know, all about the match quality, but he also understands kind of the magic of goofiness and campiness in wrestling. And he's shown that several points in his career. I mean, even if you look at the dashing stuff, this is on his head is a silly character, but he made it work. This is a guy that was I don't know how much I'm peeking behind the curtain here, but he was doing the Fuego 2 stuff on Dark. No, he gets how goofy wrestling can be, and he commits to it.
Oh yeah, no, for sure, 100%. So, as a guy that sees both sides of it, like you said, he can kind of wink at the audience, and some guys can't do that, Phil. Like some guys do that winking at the audience bit, and it's almost an insult. It's almost like, well, don't look down on us. Like you're supposed to be into this. We expect you to be in character. We expect you to be whatever it is you're supposed to be. But I don't think Cody, and I think it's the same thing that Punk has, where Punk can give you that smile and okay, Punk's in on it. He knows. And like I think Cody has the same thing, where like you said, he gets how goofy, stupid this stuff can be sometimes. But he gives you that wink as it to say it. Yeah, I know. I know this is silly. Just let's roll with it. Everybody have a good night. We'll have fun. Get you some popcorn. We'll enjoy the show. I mean, I think that's one of the things that's endearing about him as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he's good at letting people in on the joke, and I think that is initially why he fit in so well with the Bucks and Kenny, because they're good at that as well. They're good at letting their fans be in on the joke and not talking down to them. Um, I don't know if all his fans at AEW felt that way towards the end, but I think definitely throughout the run with Bullet Club and the BTE stuff, he was good at that. I mean, even if you look at recently, I think one of the funniest things he did recently was in the match with Chad Gable, which was excellent, excellent match.
Mhm.
And he gets out of the ring at one point and he's goofing off with Odin. He's like, "Oh, that's her over there. You see her? She's over there." And he's like pointing at the crowd and he's like nodding. It's so stupid, but it's hilarious.
Yeah, man. So when it comes to this guy, like you said, I think there's more to him than meets the eye. To borrow a Transformers tagline, I think there's more to him than meets the eye. I don't
Yeah,
think
he's
he's.
got a big Decepticon on his neck.
Oh, that's true. It is shaped like a Decepticon.
Big
Oh
Decepticon
my
logo on his neck.
God. Well done. You're 100% right. Well done. Jeez. Oh, that's fun. So yeah, he's been transforming for a few years now, from one thing to the next. And we have to talk about the Stardust thing because it's part of his past. And dude, he's still talking about it. He's including it in promos since he came back to WWE. And he taught, what was it he called, AEW on Monday Night Raw, that little indie company that played to 10,000 fans, and people cheered in the crowd. So Phil, at one time we suspected, we all, well, not suspected, we all knew majority of WWE fans didn't watch AEW. Dude, I'm starting to see there's a crossover, and I don't know how big it is because there's going to be WWE diehards and lifers that never watch anything else, dude. But I think there's more of a crossover now than there ever has been. You think?
I think we're in an era where more people see wrestling as an a la carte thing.
Mm,
I definitely think that there are diehards that you know are going to pick their side, whether they are a super pro WWE guy or super pro AEW guy, or even there's those super pro Impact guys out there. But I think there are also a lot of fans that watch everything or try to watch everything that they enjoy. Um, it didn't used to be that way. I think there are more people in your audience that doesn't feel like, hey, WWE is the only game in town. Like, hey, I enjoy this WWE thing, but I also take the time to enjoy AEW or watch some New Japan. And there's nothing wrong with that.
not at all. No, not at all. You got to have a full menu, kids, if you're going to be a pro wrestling fan. Well, I don't guess you have to do whatever you want. I don't care. But it
Yeah,
would
no,
make more sense to have a full menu.
yeah, no. There's too much variety out here right now. I honestly feel like this is the best time to be a wrestling fan because we have access to so much wrestling. There's no real reason to continue to watch wrestling you don't enjoy, um, because there's just so much out there. Like if WWE is not for you, or if AEW is not for you, there's something out there for you.
For sure. So the Stardust stuff, it's a hit when it's a hit, and then when it starts missing, it really, really misses. The crowds are just not buying it. I can kind of see, and all due props to Cody. He maintained it. Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you. I can't sit here and say it was visible and it was apparent he was out of it. But there were moments, Phil, watching him in the paint where I felt like, I don't know if he's into this tonight. And that's not to say that he was a professional. I just think that maybe there were moments when it was hard for him to keep it up and commit to it because he was upset. And, if I remember this correctly, the story basically was he was told, well, you're going to keep doing this. Cause he was like, when do I get to come out of this? And I'm like, well, you're not going to.
Yeah.
I'm like, you guys know, number one, I'm not trying to live off my dad's name. And I wouldn't have said it either, Phil. But I would suspect maybe somebody around him should have said, this is Dusty's kid, right? This kid's talented. If nothing else, we could promote the life out of the kid's name, if nothing else. But you're going to take that away from him? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, trying to make him like basically just you know a walking reference to his dad and his brother. Of course, he didn't want to do that forever.
And on top of that, speaking of the name, let's not forget that when he left, that they tried to keep him, and they did, from using the Rhodes name. Now, of course, we know if you're a pro wrestling fan, you know that Dusty's real name was not Dusty Rhodes, it was Virgil Runnels. Dusty Rhodes was an old baseball player. So it was a stage name, and that's fine. It's a working name, right? It's no problem. But you're going to keep the name Rhodes from him. And I remember, Cody goes and gets that tattoo on his chest that says Dream. And I remember when his dad, passed away, I think it was on Twitter when he said, he was there for me when I took my first breath, and I was there when he took his last. I will always be a Rhodes. And his theme song mentions his dad. Like, you can't take this away from me. Like, he, in spite of that company taking that name away from him, he still maintained that he deserved it. I mean,
Yeah.
Listen, Phil, what's done is done. How do you go back to that company after all that?
I mean, I think that well, I wouldn't even say I think that a lot of wrestlers grow up with this dream of wrestling there, this dream of wrestling on the biggest stage possible,
Mm-hmm.
and being the guy that can be Shawn Michaels at the end of WrestleMania and win the WWE Championship. I mean, one of my favorite wrestlers, Kofi Kingston, talked about how that was his dream for a long time, and I feel like a lot of people that got into wrestling feel that same way. And so I get, I get, even if he had success elsewhere, feeling like I have unfinished business there. This was my dream, and I just fell short of it. I had my successes, but I'm not finished with this, and I want to finish it. I want to make as much money as I can, but I also want to do this thing that I got into wrestling to do.
Yeah, main event wrestling. Man, dude. The words, these three words, Phil, go together. These three words, main event WrestleMania. They just go together.
Yeah.
That it's been like that for a long, long time. Main event WrestleMania. Like it's such a big thing for guys in this business because as we've heard for years, as fans, it's their Super Bowl.
Yeah.
For these guys who maybe never had a background in the NFL, this is their Super Bowl. This is their World Series. This is their Stanley Cup. This is the game that means more to them than anything else. If you make it to the main event of WrestleMania, you're at the peak of your profession. By the way, do you still buy into that, or do you think a lot of that is just a tagline? Does it depend on who you are? Does it depend on whether or not you're a wrestler?
I think it depends on who you are. I think it depends on what you look for in wrestling. Um, I think it's a high honor for people that's supposed to be a high honor for. But I don't agree with wrestling fans that act like it is just this sole achievement, and once you achieve this thing like main eventing WrestleMania, then you know that holds up more than anything anybody else can do with their career. Like for example, I was a big Shelton Benjamin guy for a long time, big fan of his. Um, and I would have debates on message boards and online sometime of, why wasn't he ever picked to be the guy? Why wasn't he ever world champion? And one day this guy argued with me, yeah, but he's not even better than the Miz. And I was like, what? I was like, no, the Miz can't lace this man's boots. Miz is not better than him in any way in the ring.
That's
Yeah, but he's a
insane.
but he's a better character and he's a better promo. And I was like, yeah, but Shelton was never given the chance to do the promo stuff that Miz was. So you don't even know that he's not a good promo. And when you look at the character stuff that Shelton was given in comparison to Miz, it's night and day. And that's not to knock what the Miz did, because I think the Miz has his own story and is inspirational in its own way. But he ended this by saying, well, he is better than him because he's main event at WrestleMania. And I was like, that doesn't make him better than Shelton. Just because he's main event at WrestleMania. He didn't main event WrestleMania because he's a better wrestler than Shelton. He main evented WrestleMania because at that time, he had the momentum with the fans as one of the hottest heels there, and the company chose him as the guy that year. That doesn't mean he was better than Shelton because at the end of the day, this is a meritocracy.
Yeah, good call. Yeah, good call. Yeah. I mean, by the way, Shelton Benjamin had an opportunity, and because that company's goofy, they didn't follow through with it, and I'll never understand it. I never got the dye his hair blonde and put his quote unquote mama with him. I never got
Yeah,
that. And look, it was a paycheck. He was on TV consistently. I'm not complaining. I'm sure he probably wasn't either. I mean, it's not like he was being hidden in the locker room. We got to see him work. But dude, beyond goofball, you know?
very goofy. When I think about the trajectory he should have been on, um, after I felt like he had one of the best television matches I've ever seen with HBK. I mean,
Mm.
the match he had with Chris Jericho that same year. Nah, Sheldon was great, and I felt like I could go on and on about how they dropped the ball here. He put the Money in the Bank match on the map, man. Like, I mean, those first two Money in the Bank matches aren't what they are without Shelton Benjamin.
Oh, yeah. Well said. Well said. So the Stardust stuff with Cody, and I know I keep going back to this, but I've got a agenda here, kids, because I got to read this quote. The story goes that he asked for his release, they gave it to him, and that he went to Hunter personally or one on one, and he says, "quote Hunter took it very personally because he had done so much for my dad at NXT. There was one conversation where he said." I'm shocked that you feel this way after everything I've done for your family. Now, let me tell you something, Phil. I'm sure you had to be in the room, and I'm not going to sit here and suggest Triple H is a villain or that he said it to be a certain kind of way. And maybe Triple H had his feelings hurt. Maybe he didn't realize. But like Cody's a grown man. Why would you say something like this? Like, uh, and Cody's told this story before. He said it to Heyman. That bit about you called my dad, you gave him a payday, and we ate because of you, and all this other stuff. So yeah, Dusty, I know for sure Dusty at one time was in bad financial trouble, and yes, Triple H gave him a job with NXT. But dude, Phil, Dusty earned his keep. How many talents came through that brand, that company in Florida, and were who they were because of Dusty? It's not like he got a free ride and Dusty sat around eating Cheetos all day. He more than carried his weight, and he taught the next generation that came through that brand.
Yeah, he completely molded the generation that is currently some of the biggest stars, not just there, um, but in other places. I mean, hey, you just think of like Mercedes Monet right now, Sasha Banks, uh, as a character there and everything she developed into. That's partially because of Dusty Rhodes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many other guys that are like the top of this industry that he had his fingerprints on. I mean, Roman Reigns is that's the mic drop right there. Just the fact that he was instrumental in Roman's career. You don't get much bigger than that. So I mean, honestly, no. I mean, you can make an argument that he did more for them than they did for him.
Ooh, I'll bite. I'll bite on
You
that.
can make a very strong argument because they've made millions based off of the
Hmm.
names that he helped to develop there.
Not even mentioning Seth,
Yes.
and not even mentioning, the man who used to be Dean Ambrose, now John Moxley.
Yeah, there's too many guys to name that came through NXT that he helped to mold into one of their top stars. And even if he didn't play as instrumental of a role of molding them, he was a big inspiration to them.
Hmm.
Um, and honestly, I think that they do a good job of putting over how much he did for NXT. But just be like, oh, what I did for your family. It's like, yeah, but what did he do for your company though?
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I don't know. I think that's kind of in bad form. But then again, I don't know the context it was set in. I can't, you know, speak for the tone it was used in. I don't know. But I
So
also know that, Triple H is a guy that's going to toe the line. He's a company guy. He's not just a company guy. He's the man at this point. He's not a worker anymore. He's the office. So
yeah,
I know how that goes. Uh, yeah,
yeah,
it's hard to think about it that way, but I also again I get all of the trappings of wanting to be there. And I mean, when you talk to wrestlers, you get a idea of like this is really a lot of them that's their dream job is to be there.
for sure. And you're right. Hard to know the tone because we weren't in the room. That's fair. Cody's retort to him was, "I'm not my dad. I can't stay here out of loyalty to you for giving my dad a job in 2005. I get it, and the little boy in me really appreciates what you did for my dad, but I'm not him. He's not here anymore. I've got to be me."
Yeah.
And it's at that point Cody said he knew that Hunter realized, oh, this guy's for real. He's not asking for more money. He doesn't want a title shot. Nothing would matter at this point. So Cody kind of took it on himself and said that he kind of let it get too bad before he spoke up and said anything. And I kind of get that. As a professional, you need to know when it's time. But to be fair, again, I go back to this idea of, nah, let's just keep him in the paint forever. Let's don't tell people he's Dusty's son and maybe build storylines off that where he could become his own man and get out of his father's shadow. Let's keep him in his paint, cover him up all the time. Like, dude, that's
Yeah.
asinine.
I mean, and I that's why I say that a good amount of Cody's story for the last 7 years is just extremely inspirational. Even if you don't buy into any of this wrestling stuff and you don't understand any of the backstage stuff or the politicking or anything, uh, that is something that can connect with anybody in any field. Understanding what your value is and knowing, no, I'm not going to stay here if you do not see me as what I think I am. I'm going to
Mhm.
go somewhere else and I'm going to prove you wrong. you're not going to have a choice but to pay me. You're not going to have a choice but to put me in the biggest match of my career because I'm everything that I think I am. And there's just something very inspirational about that, man. I mean, I still say to this day, one of the things that I love Punk said, and I've listened to that episode of Art of Wrestling numerous times. I think one of the best things he said in that episode is, I am everything I am, but if you don't think that I am, let me go. And I will go somewhere else and I will show you that I am who I think I am.
That's what he
and
did.
You're supposed to feel that way.
Yeah. That's what Cody did.
Yeah.
That's what Cody did. Spends 2 years in the independents when he leaves from 2016, 2018. And like you said, Ring of Honor. Dude, how smart was that championship ring instead of a belt in that company?
Really, really great stuff. I thought the way he worked that whole angle was really good. Yeah, I think his Ring of Honor stuff is really kind of underrated. And that's really because a lot of people don't watch Ring of Honor like that. But I think he was doing some great work then.
So he wins the, you're right, 100%. Ring of Honor World Championship. And I'd forgotten this. At the time, they were billing him as the first member of the Rhodes family to capture a world title in 31 years. And they are the second father-son combination to win major world championships in the United States after, what would be your guess? Doesn't go back as far as you may think.
Father and son. I don't know.
Once you hear it, you'll go, Fritz and Kerry Von Erich.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, makes sense. I don't know if I could have guessed it, honestly. So, yeah, he goes to the Ring of Honor, reinvents himself on the Indies, to be fair. Reinvented himself in Ring of Honor. It was around, and it's in May of 2017 when Meltzer makes the infamous comment, of course, that an independent wrestling show, as you said, would be unable to sell out a 10,000 seat arena in the United States. So they specifically started working on this. And in May of 2018, it was announced that the show would be named All In. And tickets, I'll never forget this, sold out in 30 minutes. At the event on September 1st, Cody defeated Nick Aldis to win the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Oh, such a great match. These two guys had a great little rivalry. But again, Ring of Honor 2016, 2018, TNA 2016, 2017, New Japan 2016, 2019 as the leader of the Bullet Club. And you're right, dude. That turn that he had on Kenny was effing great. That crowd popped off that like nobody's business. Dude, Omega took that Crossroads like he was getting decapitated.
Yeah. Really great stuff, man. I mean, I don't know. Just thinking about it, back on it and being at All In, it's a really special night. One of my favorite wrestling shows I've ever been to. You could just tell you were in the building for history happening at the time. And it just sounds it sounds like an exaggeration, but I'm just telling you, the energy in that arena was just like nothing I had ever experienced at that time. It's a great show. I mean, even when you think about other stuff he's done since then, he's had a lot of great moments from All In up. And I mean, that's not to downplay any of the stuff before that, like the New Japan run. But he had a lot of really great moments at shows after that. I mean, even when you think about, like I said, the stuff like the lashes with MJF, you think about the stuff that didn't go over well, and he ended up losing the crowd on. Him going full on dramatic in the Malachi feud and bringing his boots out to the ring like he was done with wrestling.
So odd. I remember that. Jeez.
He's just one of a kind, man. I mean, and I think the crazy thing about the stuff we just talked about with Triple H, you can tell that this guy is a fan of Triple H. I mean, just think about him and Bullet Club coming out and going to that WWE show. You remember that?
I do, actually.
Him coming out with the big flag and bringing the fans out there and standing outside the show. That's a total Hunter move. That's DX all day. I mean,
Oh, for
him
sure.
smashing the throne, him teasing, doing the pedigree for months until he finally paid it off at Hell in a Cell with another Triple H guy.
Yeah, the throne, the advent of AEW, the introduction of the company, of the brand, of the show, Dynamite, and everything. Like you said, the throne being, and exploding, and all the showmanship that goes into it, and do the comparisons being made. Oh, I see. Cody's kind of become Triple H. What did you think about all that? All that talk going on at the time. The suits. He's an
Yeah.
executive, but he's a star. He's kind of becoming Hunter. What do you think of that?
I think that he very much admires Triple H, but I also think at some point he started playing into it. Like I can't remember which match it was where he's doing the match. He brings the golden shovel from under the under the ring.
Yeah,
I
the
think that
golden shovel.
I think that he's good at understanding sometimes what the crowd wants, even if the crowd wants to be upset with him or boo him, and he's good at giving them what they want.
Hmm.
Again, I think people are gonna, if people are listening to this and they weren't a fan of his last year with AEW, they're probably looking at this like, Phil, what are you talking about? He wouldn't turn heel. But I think he was smart enough to understand that crowds want to boo him, and coming out there and allowing them to boo him is just doing things to play into the booze. I don't care what people say. He was absolutely leaning into it.
What about the idea that because he drew comparisons to Cena during that time as well?
Yeah, he got a lot of undue comparisons because I remember at some point people were trying to compare him to Jarrett. They were like, "Oh, he just wants to go there and make himself champion, and he just wants to put himself over." And I think that that's part of what dissuaded him from being a part of the world title picture. I don't think he wanted. I don't think he ever wanted that. I think he wanted to be a guy that helped in the next generation, and sometimes to the detriment of his own success.
Hmm.
But it was one of those things that I think that he cared too much about what people thought. In retrospect, I think he should have never put those handcuffs of himself creatively. And I mean, his current run with WWE shows that. I think that he should have been in the running to be AEW World Champion at one point.
No doubt. I think you're right. I think that he handcuffed himself. How much drama was behind him leaving AEW? How much of that do you buy into? Was there a lot?
There was definitely something going on. I think he downplays it now, but there was definitely something going on because there was a time period where um, he was never on screen at the same time as the Bucks or Kenny.
Hmm.
And once you notice it, you can't unsee it. He was. It's very obvious that there was something going on, and I'm not saying that those guys hate each other, and that they might not be friendly towards each other now, but there was definitely something going on.
Yeah, it kind of feels like there was something else to the story because, dude, when it came about, I'm like, looking back on it now, it was surprising, and I'm like, this is not happening. People are crazy; they've lost their minds. But then, of course, it happens. Looking back on it now, realizing where he was with his own character in AEW, and how that stuff with Brandy was going sideways on TV, all those promos with her and what's his name from Jericho's crew, uh, just horrible, and him refusing to turn heel, all this other stuff. Something kind of had to happen, didn't it? I mean, he couldn't continue on this trajectory. If he was going to stay there, something big had to happen, or that crowd was never going to ease up on him, right?
Yeah, I think somewhere along the way, um, the crowd just turned on him, and I don't think he ever truly got the crowd back.
Mm.
Um, and I think it was certain things internally the same way. I think that whatever happened between him and the elite, I think that they started to realize that his goals were different than their goals. Um, I'm not
Yeah.
sure what that is, but you could just see it. You could see that he was more interested in playing up the AEW versus WWE stuff than they might have been. And that's not to say that the Bucks hadn't had their role in stirring anti WWE hate up as well.
Hmm.
Because I mean, one of their biggest claims to fame is the cease and desist stuff. Um,
Oh yeah.
and I mean, Kenny has done it too, but I do think that for a while Cody was big into stirring the pot with that stuff. Um, I also think that oh, it just seems like his aims as a wrestler and as an executive were different than theirs. And maybe it was just creative differences, maybe it was just personality differences, and people, it happens. People get into different ventures and they grow apart because you just have different wants. I can't speak for, because of course I haven't been in a room, I haven't seen it. Uh, but it does seem like something happened that caused it. And I do think that part of it is that he had other things he wanted to do, and maybe going back to WWE was part of it. I don't know. It doesn't seem like to me that Tony wanted him gone though, because Tony has never said anything negative about Cody.
Hmm.
He's always talked about how he enjoyed working with him. After he was gone, you haven't seen him bash the guy at all. You haven't seen him come down on him and be angry with him. He just kind of let him go and do his thing where he was. It doesn't seem like he's upset about it at all.
Hmm.
I think if you ask him today, this is just a hunch. Um, he's got to be looking around like this guy was one of the biggest stars we had, and he's gone now, and he's over there on the biggest stage possible. He's main eventing. I got to think that he there's a little bit of envy there.
So I don't want to be a doomsayer for AEW because it appears as though financially they're viable. And I know a lot of it's going to center around this new TV deal, what kind of money they get from this, perks and whatnot. It seems like they're stable. But if it's hard to know, right? But let's say in 2 years it starts getting bad. Bad as in they're losing money. Did we look back on the Cody Rhodes stuff and say this was a sign, at least, that this wasn't all, fun and games like we all thought it was? Do you think that's maybe the first real? We've had other small signs here and there of people leaving and not saying much. When they do speak, it seems ominous.
Hmm.
Guys are trying to leave now because their boy hunter's in charge or whatnot. But dude, do you think Cody leaving was sort of the first real sign that okay, something's wrong here?
I do, but I don't think it was a sign that the company is going under. I think it was the first sign that you know all companies have their issues. I don't care where you work.
Hmm.
There's always going to be, differences in opinion, creative differences. Um, it's never going to be perfect anywhere. I will say this, and I've been thinking this for the last few weeks. I think that the Punk stuff looks very different if Cody didn't leave.
Mm. Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
I think it all. I think everything around it looks very different. I think that ever since the Cody thing, there's been kind of this energy in the air where it almost feels like there are too many people in that locker room that let their personal stuff get in the way of doing business. And I feel like that's been kind of permeating since the Cody thing. And there's no proof that that happened, but it's just a perception.
Kind of feel like if Cody had been there, he could have smoothed this out, and maybe it wouldn't have happened at all.
Maybe, maybe, but I don't know. I do think that there's a perception that maybe if the elite were all getting along, that Cody would still be there. I don't know how true that is because I do think that a bigger part of this is that he felt like he had unfinished business there. Whether they
Mhm.
got along or not, he was going to probably jump ship. But it's just that perception, and you know how this is, man. Perception always trumps reality.
Of course, of course. So, all right, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Favorite Cody match?
Favorite Cody match.
Let's make it easier. Favorite Cody match in AEW, then WWE, or vice versa, whichever.
Uh, Favorite AEW Cody match. Oh, I'm gonna go recency bias and say the ladder match. That might not be true. I think it's either the ladder match or it's the match with Dustin at the first Double or Nothing.
That's good. That's hard to top.
WWE, I think it's the Hell in a Cell match for sure. I think that
Mm.
Hell in a Cell match is easily among the best Hell in a Cell matches ever. Uh, is it insane to go out there and wrestle with a torn pec? Absolutely. But we've seen this guy do some pretty insane, risky things, just like we talked about earlier, throwing himself to that flaming table.
Oh
um,
my God. Yeah.
um, but I just think the emotion in that match, the storytelling in that match, it's legitimately one of my favorite Hell in a Cell matches. I think it's tough to top that with anything else he's done with WWE so far. And I think that he can. I think eventually he's going to do something else great, but it's tough to beat those first three matches with Rollins. All of those matches are very good.
This might be this thing coming up with Roman could trump everything, dude. It's hard to say.
It could. But I mean he's still got he's got so much stuff that he can still do there. I'm very interested to see what's going to happen if he does beat Roman, and what kind of champion he's going to be, what kind of matches he's going to have as champion. Because there are so many guys in that company that he hasn't really worked with that he can have some great one-on-one matches with. I'm telling you, after watching that Royal Rumble match, I am very much here for Cody versus Gunther down the road. I think that's going to be a great one-on-one feud one day.
Yeah. Still weird to talk about this guy in WWE as WWE World Champion. I mean, it's fine. It's whatever. But like, it kind of just feels
It is
so.
surreal.
It does. Jeez, dude. Do you put any merit to this whole conversation about, oh, I'm gonna win the title my dad never did? Like, in the grand scheme of things, Dusty was nowhere near that title. Well, I take that back. He was near that title in the Garden. We didn't mention Dusty in the Garden, where he was every time he came up north, he was a flat out superstar. And that crowd thought he was the coolest thing they'd ever seen because he absolutely was. But like, so I guess you could count that era. But in the era with the polka dots, absolutely not was he close to that title. So is this just something to promote? I mean, how serious do you think Cody takes this storyline?
I think it's twofold. I think part of it is you know, promoting a big match and playing up the storyline um with a wrestler that, most generations before him connected with. Um but I also think that it's part of the appeal of him coming back. Um I was very much concerned about what he would do when he went back there. But when he came out after WrestleMania and he cut that first promo and he made winning the championship his clear mission statement. It made it easy to get behind him, and because I don't think a lot of people come back to WWE with a clear motivation like that. I mean, just look at a lot of the wrestlers that have returned to WWE over the past year. None of them feel like they've had a complete story arc like Cody has.
Yeah, like you said, he came back with a mission. He didn't just come back to get a paycheck. He came back with a mission.
Yeah, he came back with a mission statement. He came back sticking to his guns. You didn't feel like he was ashamed of anything that he did while he was away. You can see that he's very much proud of that stuff still. I mean, the fact that he kept everything, the ring jacket, everything, it just made you feel like, nah, this isn't him coming back there just for a check. This is him going, that was a part of my career, but I'm not done here. I still have something I want to do here. And it plays into, his moniker of being the American Nightmare and being the black sheep of his family. And, just the thought that Dustin was okay with his spot on the card. He was okay with the legacy he created as Gold Dust, and that's nothing to sneeze at. He's one of the greatest wrestling characters of all time,
Mm-hmm.
um, and he's had a tremendous career on his own. But just him deciding, like, I've done a lot of great things in my career. I've done enough to make my dad proud, but it isn't enough. I want to be world champion. It was enough for him to come back here and work for you guys and, you know, help you guys be better. But I don't want to just do that. I want to be champion. And I
Yeah.
think the idea of him being a little bit selfish in that and being like, I know what my value is. I know what I want to be. I know what my dream is. I want this. Again, it makes it hard to root against him, man. It makes it he just it's easy to connect with that.
Yeah. Yeah, he's and talking about his presentation, as we said, the gear is the same, the tat is the same. The hair color, which has been black at times, now dyed blonde like his dad has been for a while now. The gear, the weight belt, the look, the music that starts off with the Cody soundbite. Wrestling has more than one royal family, which is a
Yeah.
direct knock at the McMahons, and then he's back at WWE with the same soundbite. Dude, is that nice? In some corner of Cody's brain, is that a nice little middle finger to that company, or do you think he even thinks about that?
It is, but you're also coming into this angle with the head of the table and a guy that is a top of one of the most prestigious wrestling families in the world. And
Mm.
now he's coming out on his way to a match with Roman Reigns. And the first thing you hear is wrestling has more than one royal
Mm-hmm.
family. It's something poetic about it, man.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think I don't know. It would be easy to say that this doesn't fit, but I think it all fits. I think his music is still great. I think he's got one of the best themes in wrestling right now. Um, and every time he comes out and he does his entrance, that crowd gets louder and louder when it gets to the whoa. At some point, we're gonna hear the crowd singing along that entire theme, man.
Yeah.
Because I doubted this at one point until I was really sitting and watching. I think it was Raw when he first came back. And I was like, no, they love him.
Mm.
I doubted how over he was with that crowd, but I was like, nah, they love him.
Yeah. Oh, dude. Yeah. They sing like every time he comes out now. Have you noticed that?
Yes, I mean, you when you look out in that crowd and you see how many people have the signs up with his logo on it, or the Cody signs, or you see how many kids are like dressed like him in the crowd.
Mm.
Nah, they love him.
So let's try to predict this, because I'd love to know what you think here. Let's try to predict this. Do you foresee them not only giving him those two belts, but putting him on this run that absolutely solidifies him? Because let's say that after Mania, Roman takes a break.
Mm-hmm.
Just rest up if nothing else. And Cody Rhodes is the absolute top guy in that company. And what are we talking, Phil? 6 months, a year, 2 years, the extent of his contract? Do you think they go all, no pun intended, all out for this guy? Or is this, we talked about a swerve. I don't know, dude. Do you think this company has it in them to commit fully to Cody, or do you think they'll do what they always do and that shoot themselves in the foot along the way?
I think that they've committed. When I say that I could see him losing at WrestleMania, I could absolutely see him losing. But all of the signs around this tell me that they've committed to him. When he was off TV, they made sure to show the vignettes for him. They made it a big deal when he was coming back.
Mm-hmm.
They gave him the highest honor that they could at WrestleMania, other than putting him in the main event. Um, they didn't dilute any parts of his entrance. They didn't change anything. They
Mm-hmm.
are fully bought into the business of Cody Rhodes. I mean, if you need any more evidence, John Cena came back on Monday night and he endorsed Cody Rhodes. He didn't
Mm-hmm.
endorse anybody else on that roster that night. He endorsed Cody Rhodes. That's it. That's the sign. He's the guy now. Um, I mean, when you look at all of the stuff that the way they've packaged all of this, nah, I think they've committed, and I think it's twofold here. I think he came along at the perfect time, at a time where uh, they had spent so long making Roman the guy, and they hadn't built up anybody big enough to topple him yet. You came in with a guy that is just like fresh off of fresh off of a run with your biggest competitor, so he's
Mm-hmm.
already newsworthy. You don't have to build this guy up in anything because it's already newsworthy that he's making a jump. And he's undefeated since he got there. He still hasn't lost a match.
Right.
So you don't. It really took a lot of the guesswork that they had to do into building this guy up. They really had a shortcut because he came in hot already. All you had to do was keep him hot. So it made it easy to make him the guy, to make him the option against Roman. But the second part is, and I think this is the more important part, is it's advantageous to book him well at this point. It's in their benefit business wise to book him well. And I could say, it's because it seems like the fans are into him, but if you're getting the first guy to jump ship from that company, you got to treat him well. You got to show everybody else there that's looking at this. No, you can come here. We'll let you still have your interests. You can keep your name. You can do everything you were doing elsewhere. We got this, and we're gonna book you well. This guy came here and went straight to the Royal Rumble, won the Royal Rumble. Now, everybody else that's looking at this with any kind of common sense knows that everybody is not Cody Rhodes. Not everybody's going to come there and get the deal that he got.
Sure.
But it's in their benefit to make it look like, hey, if you leave there and you come here, we'll treat you well. Look how we're treating Cody.
Yeah.
And so, no, I think a big part of this is to help entice other people come and sign. I absolutely believe that. I believe that it's not just that, a great viable contender fell in their lap, but it also is beneficial for us because we get to look like, oh, well, look, we're treating them well. You're not happy over there? You can always come over here. You sick of being over there at that other company with your producer all in the video dancing?
Yeah.
Nah, come to WWE.
Do we get Cody Rhodes versus MJF in WWE next year?
Ooh. He is still doing this bidding war of 2024. He is very much a guy that I could see fitting with WWE. He's clearly friends with Cody. Still calls him the American roller coaster. I don't know how much of that is an act. I don't know. But MJF is a guy that I could see them taking a chance on. I don't know. But I do think that Cody is going to spark. He's going to spark a change in that company. Whether it's by design or it's partially because they just saw that they needed to change. Kind of the same way that competition with WCW inevitably made WWE change. And I think the same thing is going to start happening here. When you look at the rumors around Jay White, for example, and Jay White possibly going there, and last year, imagine this. Last year, at some point, this company was telling us they were done signing indie wrestlers. They were just going to develop athletes through that NIL system and bring them up. That seems like it's changed. It seems like we're back in the business of working with indie wrestlers again. I mean, it shows Triple H is bringing in his guys. They're bringing back Regal, and I don't think they brought back Regal just to work with his son. Regal's probably going to start scouting again. I think that bringing Cody in is a part of a larger change.
I mean, we've seen the photos and little workout videos from that crew from that, what you call it, the NIL or whatever, but like, I got thoughts on that would take another hour and a half. Because that company's tried that stuff before and we see how it turned out. It doesn't always work out. I don't know that it ever works out 100% for any of those guys.
Yeah, and I mean, it can work. You can get that one special guy, or you can get a handful of special guys from that world that is taken seriously as an athlete and turn them into something special. Bianca Belair is a great example. Big E is another good example of people that were just athletes. They weren't wrestling fans, but you molded them into something. It can be done. But I do think that it's something to be said about people that are like Cody, the people that spend that spend their adolescence wanting to do this, and they work hard to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you cut off the pipeline of those guys, you're missing something. I don't think you can completely build a generation off of athletes that have no interest in wrestling.
No, you can't have. No, I agree with that totally.
I think there's a world where you can strike a good balance of both. I don't think that you can make a roster solely of either or.
So I want to see him win because I'm a major fan of his dad. Always have been, always will be. I'm a fan of Cody. I'm a fan of his brother. I love this family. I mean, I think that there's a lot of ways to tell great stories here, and I hope that they take advantage of it. I got doubts, but it is what it is. I, unlike a lot of people, didn't hate on the guy for going back. I did say, because I remember saying at the time, what makes this guy think anything's going to go any differently than it did before? And I think it's a fair point to be made.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying I'll be right because I don't know that. But at the time, that was my first knee jerk reaction was, what makes him think anything's going to be different this time? But I guess, Phil, the answer to that at the end of the day is that he's different. He
Yes.
made it different. Like if he'd gone out and done nothing and just disappeared and then came back, he's going to get put back in that pain again. But
But
like not
yeah,
now.
yeah, he's been there. He was there as a young man, and he realizes how that company does things. He realizes how they do business, and he came back with a plan. He came back with demands. He came back with things like, "Hey, I want to be here, but this is what I want you to do for me."
Mm-hmm.
He's not a guy that would allow himself to uh, sell his name away again. Like he
Mm-hmm.
talked about that when he was away, that Brandy was smart enough to not use her real name because, you know, she had the business savvy to do that. And I think now this isn't a young man that just is happy to be there anymore. This is a guy that's gone out and made himself into a star, and he understands more how the business works. He understands how the company works. So I don't think he's going to allow himself to be taken in the same way that he was before.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I hope the best for him. I was at the same time I said that stuff. I was also one of the guys saying, "Good for him." I hope he got every last penny he could possibly get from them, with more on the way, because they let him keep everything, and I love that. And I love that it appears anyway as though he went to the table saying, "Okay, here's what I want." And like Phil, if they'd said no, who cares at that point? He could have gone anywhere else in the world he'd wanted to. I mean, New Japan would have taken him back in a heartbeat.
Hmm.
Any company would have took him in a heartbeat. I imagine, I would venture a guess, he's because I base this on him being a smart guy. He's doesn't it also means he's probably smart financially, which means he doesn't have to go to be begging for money. So if they told him no, who cares? He could have went somewhere else and been just fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really happy for him. I think that he's accomplished so much in his career, and I think that he handled this jump back to WWE very well.
Mm,
Um, I don't know how it's gonna end, but right now I think that he's on a heck of a run, and I think he's got to win at WrestleMania. I think that is the logical next step to this, man. It would be foolish to not make this man champion, man.
yeah.
uh, it would just be a complete and utter blunder. Especially after the story you've told with him coming into this, I feel like you have to pull the trigger and make this guy champion. Uh, and I'm sure he's gonna try and bleed at WrestleMania, and tears will flow.
I want him to get color. I don't care. I hope they threaten him, and I hope he does it anyway.
I hope they say they fine him and he just eats the fine.
Yeah.
Because
Pay the fine and donate that amount to charity on the same day. Just do it.
yeah, part of me wants to see him in this match with both those titles, with uh with his face bloodied, uh screaming for Brandy in the crowd like Rocky. I just we need to see it,
Oh.
man.
Now you're going back to that cheese ball side of him.
We need to see it. We need to see him on his knees in the ring crying with those belts. And like Brandy in the front row cheering him on, and somewhere Dustin Rhodes is doing the slow golf clap standing up. We need it.
Yeah.
We need it.
Well, yeah,
Honestly,
dude.
honestly, this is what I want to see. I don't think they're gonna do it. But I think the story so far of this match, including the Sami Zayn stuff, which has been tremendous, one of the best storylines WWE has ever produced. Um, I hope that the story going into the match on night 2 is that Roman is completely isolated himself. So by the time he gets to WrestleMania and he comes out there, he's going to be alone. And Cody is going to come out the same way he came out the night that he won the NWA title, with all of his team behind them in the American Nightmare jackets. I think they should do it. Brandy comes out, Dustin, DDP, all of them, Arn. I think they should do it.
I think that would be poetic right there. I really do. I'm really down for that. I'm here for it. I love that, dude. That's great. That's really good. Yeah. I mean, I want the best for this guy. We kicked off this show talking about blue collar, down to earth, easily relatable talents. I don't know if we can still say Cody's easily relatable, but Phil, I think you made a good point earlier when you said his roots were humble. By the time that he was a teenager, Dusty wasn't exactly still a star in terms of, financially anyway. And things were happening that, NXT gave him, Triple H gave him a break in NXT, whatever that looks like. And he finally got himself back on top of the map where he deserved to be and never should have been off to begin with. But I dare say Cody didn't grow up with, private planes and limousine rides and all this other stuff. Like, he grew up knowing what it was like to be the son of a plumber. So how poetic is it that he ends up on top of the world in that company, man? I'm here for it. So we'll try to put a button on this, dude. Whatever final thoughts you have in terms of this guy, especially going into Mania, whatever you think may or may not happen, whatever you got. What's your last word on Cody Rhodes?
Yeah, I think at one point this guy was seen as a perennial mid-carder. That's all he could be. But I think he's shown that he's much better than that. He has so much to offer a company. And I'm glad he's finally getting a chance to show that on the biggest stage possible, man. I'm really happy for him. I hope that his time with WWE this time around ends well. And part of me wants to see him go back to AEW. I would love to see him do the WWE stuff for 3 years and then eventually go back to AEW and attempt to finish his business there and become AEW champion.
I'm with that. And I'd be shocked if that didn't happen at this point. I really do think that will happen as well. Well, kids, there you have it. There is the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes. We'll see what goes down. What does or does not happen at WrestleMania, you can be sure of one thing. It's out of your hands, kids, just like it's out of our hands here on the show. So take it and run with it, whatever happens. Stay tuned for it. These two podcast dudes will be rooting for Cody, I believe, because, listen, if for no other reason, folks, he's earned it. I think at the end of the day, that's what matters most, is that he earned it. So, yeah. Do what the world tells you no. Tell them yes. Go make it yes, right?
Absolutely. What is his catchphrase? Go from undesirable to undeniable.
That's it. Yep. That's it. Can't do much better than that. Stay tuned, folks. Let's see how it goes. In the meantime, that is Cody Rhodes. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.